ॐ आञ्जनेयाय विद्महे वायुपुत्राय धीमहि तन्नो हनुमत् प्रचोदयात्। ॐ तत्त्वज्ञानप्रदाय नमः। Chapter 6 Kesari Nandana Hanuman's Education. When Hanuman was 5 years old, Kesari decided that it was high time his son got a formal education. The sage Agastya told him to send him to the sun god Surya. The sun is the source of all light and knowledge, and has already blessed Hanuman. He will surely accept him as a pupil. Anjana was not too happy at sending her son so far off. However, Kesari urged her that it was the best thing for their child, and thus Hanuman was sent to the sun god for instruction on the Vedas and all allied subjects. Kesari chose Surya as his son's teacher because the sun is the sole karma sakshi, or the eternal witness of all the deeds of human beings. Hanuman did not remember his great powers and innocently asked his mother how he would reach the solar orb. She reminded him that he was the son of the wind god, and immediately he soared into the sky. Hanuman respectfully approached the charioteer of the solar deity. Aruna was the name of his charioteer, and he allowed Hanuman to approach his master and prostrate himself to him. You see everything there is to see in the universe, and therefore you know everything there is to know. Kindly accept me as your pupil. Surya hesitated, for he remembered only too well what had happened the last time Hanuman came near him, and he felt quite nervous about accepting him. I don't have the time, he said. You see, I move across the sky in this chariot, night and day, always facing forward, and never slackening my pace. How can I possibly give you instruction? Hanuman cheerfully replied that he did not see any problem in this. You can teach me as you ride across the sky. I will face you and move backward, matching my pace with yours, so that I can get instruction straight from your lips. The sun god agreed reluctantly, for he was well aware of Hanuman's divine nature and exceptional abilities. He also knew that he was born knowing everything, and all he needed to do was to stimulate his memory. Happy at being accepted, Hanuman placed his body into orbit around the sun. He enlarged his body, placed one leg on the eastern ranges and the other on the western ranges, and turned his face towards the sun. Pleased with his persistence, Surya tried to teach him. Hanuman kept moving backwards in order to remain facing Surya continuously. As he taught, Surya was impressed by the zeal and determination of his student. Hanuman roared like a planet before the chariot of the sun god, withstanding the awesome glare until he became well versed in the 4 books of knowledge, that is the Vedas, the 6 systems of philosophies, the darshanas, the 64 arts or kalas, and the 108 occult mysteries of the tantras. He flawlessly memorized each mantra and verse in the shortest time possible. It is said that Hanuman rivals the sage Brihaspati, the guru of the gods, in all the branches of learning, as well as in the practice of austerities. Having become a master of all that he had set out to learn, it was now time for him to pay for his education and give the fee known as Guru Dakshina. Surya demurred and said that having such a devoted pupil was payment enough for him. But when Hanuman insisted on giving something to express his gratitude, the sun god asked him to look after the welfare of his son, Sugriva, who was a stepbrother of Vali, the king of monkeys. Thus, Surya gave a most precious gift to his son Sugriva, for without Hanuman, Sugriva would not have been able to accomplish anything. There is another version of the same story. When Hanuman reached the sun god's chariot, he found that he had already had a great number of other pupils. These were the tiny sages known as the Valakilas, who were 1,000 in number. When Hanuman humbly asked the sun to accept him also as one of his pupils, these hot-tempered sages informed their guru that they would not study the Vedas in the company of a monkey. Surya did not know what to do, for he feared the curse of these irascible sages. This was when Hanuman devised the ruse of running backwards in front of the sun, so that he could learn everything without being compelled to join the company of the narrow-minded sages. As a result of facing the solar orb for so long, his face became black. Another version relates how Hanuman was so intelligent that he was able to learn the whole wisdom of the Vedas in a mere fortnight. The sun god, however, was loath to part with his exceptional pupil, who was a part of Shiva himself. So he repeatedly caused Hanuman to forget what he had learned, so that the lessons were dragged on for many months. However, Hanuman pleased him so much by his docility and devotion that he released him and gave him the boon that henceforth those who invoked Hanuman's name would never forget their lessons. Another story goes that when he was asked by his parents to seek the sun as his guru, he merely seated himself in meditation and continuously repeated the Gayatri mantra, the great mantra that invokes the supreme intelligence as reflected in the sun. He sat in meditation the whole day, following the course of the sun across the sky until it set in the west. At the end of the day, he was perfectly blessed with all knowledge. Actually, the ancient rishis had the ability to absorb whatever information they wanted from the ether. Knowledge of the Vedas exists in space in the form of sonic vibrations. The rishis had inner antennas that were capable of picking up these vibrations. These vibrations are very subtle and always exist in space. They can be compared to the television and radio signals with which we are familiar. The rishis did not need any external aids like the ones we use to pick up signals. Hanuman practiced the same technique. The parents were still eager to find an earthly guru for him and did not know whom to approach. One day, when Hanuman was playing in the forest, he saw a ferocious tiger approaching him. The tiger pounced on him with a menacing growl, but Hanuman was undeterred. He jumped 10 feet into the air and landed on the tiger's back, catching him in a merciless hold. He opened the gaping jaws and tore them apart. The tiger was exhausted by then, and Hanuman rode on his back effortlessly. However, before he could go far, the tiger collapsed. Just then there appeared before Hanuman a hunter wearing a tiger skin and adorned with a necklace of tiger claws. A bow and quiver were slung across his broad shoulders. Seeing his form, Hanuman felt a great love well up in his heart. He fixed his admiring gaze on him without blinking. The hunter laughed and asked, "Aren't you frightened of me? I might be a monkey hunter. I might catch you and take you back with me." Hanuman gazed fearlessly at him and replied, "I have no fear of anyone, but I would like to know who you are. I haven't seen anyone like you around here." The hunter replied, "I am a hunter and I live far away in the snow mountains. If you are not frightened of me, I am willing to teach you many interesting things." "My parents are on the lookout for a tutor for me," said Hanuman. "Come with me and I'll take you to them." Anjana and Kesari were shocked to see their darling son coming hand in hand with such a rough-looking fellow. They were even more shocked when Hanuman told them that he wanted to go with his new-found friend to learn the arts. "Are you out of your mind? Just looking at him, one can see that he is uncultured and uneducated. How can such a fellow teach you anything?" asked Kesari. "Father, how can you make such statements about someone you don't know? I want him as my guru." "Doesn't the pupil have any choice in choosing a guru?" asked the hunter. "Maybe he has," Kesari replied, "but he's only a child, and I'm not interested in keeping you as his guru." "Shouldn't you test my prowess before branding me as an uncultured brute?" persisted the hunter. Anjana and Kesari were amazed at these words of the hunter. They looked at each other and Kesari said, "I don't think this is an ordinary hunter. We should give him a chance to prove his mettle." So saying, he challenged the hunter to a duel with his weapons. The hunter was undeterred but said that they would need an umpire to decide the winner. Kesari suggested Anjana. The hunter laughed and said that she was hardly a good choice, since obviously a wife would always choose her husband as the winner, even if he were defeated. Kesari admitted the truth of this and mentally called upon Vayu to help him. Immediately Vayu appeared in a gust of wind and agreed to do the umpiring. Now Kesari girded up his loins and charged the hunter with upraised fists, pounding his chest. He threw him a few lengths away. Anjana was delighted to see her husband's feat and applauded him. However, happiness was short-lived. The hunter coolly rose up and came up to the huge figure of Kesari. He caught hold of him and threw him easily into the air. Kesari landed with a thud that knocked him out. Anjana ran to his aid and massaged his body until he slowly regained consciousness. He managed to rise up painfully and was all set for another bout, but Anjana begged him not to have another encounter with the hunter. Kesari could not bear to admit defeat and shot a glance at the hunter, who seemed to be having a quiet laugh at his expense. "Let us try our prowess with weapons now," Kesari said. The hunter immediately stood ready with his bow and arrow. Kesari also took up his bow and shot arrow after arrow at the hunter, who parried them all with ease until he eventually shot down Kesari's bow so that he stood defenseless. Anjana realized that this was no ordinary hunter. She closed her eyes and brought her favorite deity to the mind. When she opened them, she saw that the hunter was none other than Shiva himself. Hastily she plucked some flowers and ran forward, placing them at the hunter's feet. Hanuman also brought some flowers and placed them at his chosen guru's feet. The hunter placed his palms on the boy's head and blessed him. Turning to Kesari, he asked with a laugh, "Now do you have any more objections to my becoming your son's tutor?" Kesari fell at his feet and begged him to pardon him. "It is our great good fortune that you have come here in person and agreed to become our son's guru. Because of this, we have had the great good fortune to see you with our own eyes. Pray forgive my transgressions and take our son as your pupil." Shiva agreed and touched the boy's tongue with his ring. Lo and behold, the child started to sing a paean of praise for the Lord. He then whispered the sacred syllable in the child's right ear, by which Hanuman became a fully enlightened being. Next, he told Hanuman that Saraswati, the goddess of arts, would grant him proficiency in music when the time came and when he so desired it. The parents were delighted to hear all this and prostrated themselves again and again to the Lord. Thus Lord Shiva taught Maruti all the esoteric knowledge of mantras and yantras and various other spiritual secrets. It is said that Vishnu taught him Bhakti Yoga, Sankhya Yoga, and Hatha Yoga. Parashurama, the sixth incarnation of Vishnu, is supposed to have taught him the secrets of wrestling. Now his father Vayu took over his teaching. First of all, he taught him the esoteric secrets of pranayama, or the science of breath control. He then taught him to fly like a bird and jump vast distances. One day he presented him with a beautiful lute and told him to sing and praise the Lord with this accompaniment. Hanuman was delighted and spent the evening hours known as Sandhya, twilight devotions, singing to God. Once, while he was bathing in a forest pool, he heard the dulcet sounds of a nightingale and thought to himself that he would really love to sing like that. Just then he remembered the words of Shiva, who had encouraged him to pray to the goddess Saraswati if he wanted to be a master of the fine arts. As soon as this idea came to his mind, he jumped into the pool and stood waist deep in water. He prayed to the goddess to grant him a boon. Hearing his fervent plea, the goddess appeared and shook him slightly so that he opened his eyes. She then told him to ask for any boon. He bowed low before her and asked her to grant him knowledge of all the fine arts, as well as the ability to sing. Smilingly, she agreed to his request and told him to take up the lute and start singing. Having prostrated himself before her, he took the lute, sat under a tree, and started to sing. Hearing his melodious voice, accompanied by the lucid notes of the lute, even the wild animals came near to listen. Celestial beings passing in the sky also stopped to enjoy the music. Just at that time, Narada, the divine sage, who was a famous singer and a great devotee of Lord Vishnu, happened to pass by and was struck by the sight. He thought he was the only one who played on the lute and sang for the Lord, and he was not too pleased at this intruder into his particular field. He came down hurriedly to the ground to find out what was so special about Hanuman's voice that made the whole forest go into a state of ecstasy. He approached the young devotee and tapped him on the shoulder. Hanuman opened his eyes and saw the sage standing with his lute in front of him. Narada told him who he was, and Hanuman bowed with all humility before him. Narada then asked him to sing another song for him. Hanuman agreed and began to sing. When he heard his dulcet notes, Narada was totally immersed in the music, and when he stopped, he felt truly humbled and said, "O Hanuman, I came to test your ability, and now I am convinced that you are a great master of music. I see that the goddess Saraswati has indeed blessed you with all her gifts. Let me add my blessings to hers. You are certainly superior to me." Hearing this, Hanuman fell at the feet of the divine sage and said, "O noble one, surely none can compare with you in devotional singing. Your fame has spread over all the three worlds. I am nothing compared to you." Narada was pleased both by Hanuman's humility as well as by his divine voice. Having blessed him, he rose up to go, but was dismayed to find that the lute he had placed on a rock had become stuck to the boulder that had melted at the sound of Hanuman's music. Turning to Hanuman, he begged him to sing once again, so that the rock would melt once more and free his lute. Hanuman did so, and the celestial sage was able to retrieve his lute. In the age of Dwapara, all solid things like rocks were supposed to have melted when they heard the ravishing notes of the flute that Lord Krishna played in the forest of Vrindavana. The same was the case here. Having realized Hanuman's greatness, Narada blessed him once again and went on his way. Some years passed in this delightful fashion. However, the time was fast approaching when this idyllic time would come to an end. One day, when Anjana was immersed in meditation, she heard a voice from within her calling, "Punjigastala, Punjigastala, your time for reprieve has come. You may now return to your celestial abode." When she heard this, a flood of memories arose in her, and her past life became vivid in her mind. "I am not a monkey called Anjana. I am the celestial maiden known as Punjigastala. I am the adopted daughter of Brihaspati, the guru of the gods. I am now freed from my curse and can return to my father's ashrama." But somehow this thought did not bring her any joy. Her eyes filled with tears. Her husband Kesari came near her and asked her the reason for her tears. Baby Hanuman came close and hugged her and promised never to get into any mischief. At this, Anjana burst into tears and hugged him close. "My darling son, it's time for me to return to my abode and leave you, but I cannot bear the thought of leaving you and going back." Neither her son nor her husband could figure out her meaning. "What are you saying? I don't understand. Where do you have to go? This is your home." "My lord," she said, "in reality I am not Anjana, but an Apsara called Punjikasthala. I belong to the ashrama of Brihaspati. I took the form of a monkey due to a curse. Now I have been reprieved from it and given permission to return home. But the thought of parting from you and my beloved son is tearing me apart. Oh, Anjana, I cannot live without you. I will definitely not allow you to go anywhere," cried Kesari. "My beloved husband, none can change the course of destiny. You will not be able to stop me, so please give me leave to go." Her son now spoke true words of wisdom. "Oh, mother," he said, "go in peace. You are absolutely right in saying that none can stop the wheel of destiny." The wind god Vayu now appeared, comforted her and said, "Don't grieve about your son. We are all here to see to his welfare. If you have to go, go in peace." The heroic Kesari could not bear this parting. "I cannot live without you, beloved. Wherever you go, I will follow." Hearing her husband's oath, Anjana closed her eyes for a few minutes and meditated on her guru. Mentally, she begged him to allow her to go to the mountain of Kanchana in the Himalayas, along with her husband, in order to practice tapasya. She clasped Hanuman in her arms, kissed his forehead, and gave him to Vayu. Then turning to Kesari, she said, "My lord, I feel the same way as you. If you want to accompany me, clasp me in your arms." He did as bidden, and to the amazement of her son, they both rose up into the sky and then turned into balls of light. He watched in wonder as they slowly disappeared towards the north. Brihaspati granted her wish, and they both went and stayed at the mountain known as Kanchana. Om Shri Hanumantaye Namaha.